So, okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Mary, co-chair of Rev HoCo. We are first going to talk about ground rules, etc. We're going to talk about our chapters, efforts, the issues that we work on and organize around. Should I wait?
Do you want to use the microphone?
I can speak louder if that's helpful. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then let me know how I'm doing, okay? Okay. So yeah, we're going to talk about the community efforts that we organize around. We're going to have a break for prayer and guitar. Everyone is welcome to have food. We have enough food for everyone. I actually think we're not going to do endorsements anymore. That might not be true. Then we're going to have a panel discussion on Hindutva. We're going to answer some questions, and then, if time permitting, we're going to have a short presentation from Hindutva, Maryland, talking about some of their work. I think we decided not to do any questions. Oh, you did? Okay, well, great. You can do that one, maybe. Okay. Oh, okay. Where's picking up? I am probably. Sorry. Give me a second, please. Okay. Can virtual?
Okay, just testing. Here we go.
Okay. Everyone can hear me now virtually. Great. I'm still hearing an echo.
Oh, so much fun.
Okay. Yeah. So, especially since we know this topic is pretty controversial, we are asking if you have an issue. We're not harassing people. No one is here to say anything negative about someone's life or their right to exist in any way. We are here to learn about a topic that is oppressive to a group of people. And yeah, so to that point, please be respectful to everyone who is here. Oh yeah, and also that said, we have coordinated with security. If there is disruption, we will remove you. We will ask you to leave. But yeah, so this is an opportunity to learn and connect with our community. We're not debating, we're not having necessarily discussions. This is more of a listen, learn type of experience. And we are very happy to have everyone here who is willing to participate respectfully. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so just to introduce some of our people, I don't know who most of them are, but Jake is another co-chair as well. Our treasurer, Francis, is somewhere around here. So yeah, most of them are here. But so the efforts that we've been doing recently, I guess we'll just discuss. We have been working hard on free Palestine efforts in the community. If you want to share anything like very briefly about that effort and the ceasefire resolution, Jake, you're welcome to, but you don't necessarily need to. If you want to share about the ceasefire and the 19th event, or you do this one.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, rent stabilization, that's another thing we've been super active in the county. We are currently working on trying to form some tenant associations to empower tenants to advocate for themselves, rent stabilization efforts and, other rental issues. And okay, yeah, so recently, last meeting, we joined the One Fair Wage Coalition, which is working to abolish the sub-minimum tipped wage in Maryland. So that's, the wage that is lower for people who work jobs that use tips as well. Usually make like $3 to $4 an hour or less. And yeah, so some other efforts that we kind of talk about, though I don't know we have any updates about are listed here. Our previous co-chair is running for Columbia Association in Wild Lake. I don't think the treasurer is around, but usually that doesn't change much. So yeah, those are some of our efforts here. Ways to get involved, some stuff that we're working on right now. Our friend Rev HoCo is running for Board of Education in District 4. So we are, working on getting him elected. He aligns with a lot of our values, equity in the school system, supporting every child, advocating for students and their right to speak, their minds and have equal resources, equal treatment, all of that. Yeah, we're working on building a social media committee to get that out better. And I was gonna send the Google form link. Do you wanna, you can send the form to sign up for in the chat maybe. Then, yeah, if you want to join our email list, you're welcome. We have social media here as well. And okay, you want to talk about endorsements?
Yes, just put this link in the chat real quick.
You speak louder, please?
Yeah, sorry about that.
And maybe specify
Yeah,
who's voting.
yeah.
With the election season coming up on May 14th, with the primary elections happening, I know there's several candidates in this room. A lot of people running for races that might not even be in Howard County, but we appreciate you being here anyways. But we are going to be, taking votes on endorsements in several races that do cover Howard County. So we're going to do that real quickly. Hopefully we can get through that before 7:09, because we only have we're only endorsing in 2 local races, and only one of the candidates that we're considering is here. First, we are considering in the District 1 Board of Education race, Meg Ricks, who is a Elkridge resident that lives here because we're in Elkridge. I'm from Elkridge. She ran in 2022 for the at-large seat. She was a grassroots candidate. A lot of the progressive groups at the time endorsed her, including Progressive Democrats of Howard County. Now she's running again, just in District 1, where I think she'll perform a little bit better. The two other candidates running, one of whom I think was invited to this event, but did not like the topic from what I understood. And then the other one I think is more a Republican from what I understand, and we're more of a progressive club. And so Meg Ricks is who we're considering in District 1, and so unfortunately she was not available to be here tonight. But this is if this is your first meeting, you're not an Our Revolution member just quite yet. We could do a quick hand vote or a voice vote for just the people who are members of Our Revolution. So real quick, I would motion that we endorse Meg Ricks for the District 1 Board of Education race. Is there a second for that motion? Gus? Okay. Is there any discussion before we take a vote?
Did we support Meg in a previous campaign or?
Yeah, she ran in 2022. I don't know if Our Revolution endorsed in the Board of Education races in 2022, but certainly the Progressive Democrats of Howard County, who is sort of like our sister organization at this point, they endorsed Meg Ricks in that race. So she does have, for the most part, progressive-minded, Our Revolution centric values. So, yeah. Any other additional discussion? Okay, well, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion carries. Well, congrats to Meg Ricks. And then we could go to Rev HoCo running for District 4 Board of Education. And if you want to speak for just a few minutes, but I think sunset's coming real quick, so just maybe like three minutes or so to tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right,
Thanks, Jake and Mary. My name is Hindutva. I'm a resident of Howard County. Been in Howard County for about 14 years. I'm running for Board of Education to advocate for a truly inclusive school system. I don't believe that the school system is inclusive right now. I want a school system where children, regardless of their income level, are able to achieve at the highest potential. That's not the case right now. And I want every school to be able to deliver on that expectation. I don't believe that, many know that I'm critical of the county's exploitation of cultural issues to advance perhaps a developer agenda or political agenda. I've been very critical of that. This issue that became much more salient after I witnessed the way the school dealt with the issue of the Gaza genocide. The superintendent, his initial reaction to that was to send a very slanted email. Subsequent, to that, the school system censored the students as they attempted to do walkouts. Some schools, they were taking away signs, that say ceasefire. That was really, very troubling to me that we would censor students as they're doing simple things, saying stop killing children. It's just as simple as that. The school board last week voted to increase class sizes and eliminate critical programs, GT, music, and the school system is quite frankly in a decline. We're in a spiral, and it's been going on for a few years, where the school board does not ask for what it needs, and it placates perhaps the county executive and what he wants, and asks for something less than what's expected. And so that should change. I am a vocal critic of the county's zoning and land use decisions. That behavior would not change. So that what I would do is ask for what the school system needs. To change the trajectory. So it's an honor to be considered for this endorsement by our Revolution Howard County. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer after the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. So I will motion to support, to endorse Harry. Does anyone have any discussion or second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Francis, seconded. Anyone have discussion? Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Thank you. All those opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, so similarly, we have, we are deciding whether to, I don't know if you have heard of the voting uncommitted, movement that our Revolution National is pushing. We are voting whether to do that as a club as well, in Maryland for the primary. Does anyone want to move to support, uncommitted in the primary? Okay, any second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion here? Okay, all those opposed? No, sorry, what's it called? In favor. What?
All those in favor?
In favor, thank you. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay, that passes as well. Okay, so we are about ready to move into our break for prayer and iftar. if you just wait one moment, I'm going to grab a person and I'm gonna come back. I'm all in the past.
Careful, careful.
Did I fix it? Am I
Good job. Nope, you're good.
Hi. Hey, everybody, my name is Kristen, I'm with Neighbors. I'm running for Congress in District 3, of which Howard County is a part of. And I thank you all for the invitation to come to this event tonight. And I'm here to learn and I'm here to listen. So, come say hi. It's really nice to be amongst you all.
Yeah, if any other candidates want to introduce themselves in the, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Chris Heiser. I'm running for 6. I know the way is way, but we have a lot of need around here. I'm a London chaplain, so I'm supporting the cause. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Malcolm Colombo. I am also running in the 3rd district for Maryland. I just want to say I'm also here to learn. I come from a very, poor background and our focus of our campaign is making sure those kind of morals come forward and make sure that others as well can find success that I was able to, and success from government programs that helped raise me, whether it was SNAP or Medicaid or Medicare. So if anybody has any questions, I have the information for all of you to look at. I'm always here to answer questions. Any questions that come to me, I always personally answer. So anytime you would like to, thank you.
Thank you all. Is there anybody else? Thank you all.
We're about ready. Yeah, so we're about to break in just a couple of minutes, but we will just wait until then.
Gonna explain the process for people to get food and those who are going to go to pray, where they're going to go, how they're going to go, and those who remain.
Good call. You're back.
So, I was out of the room, but did the uncommitted vote, pass? Okay. So yeah, I would encourage people, I think people saw what happened in Michigan and what happened in Minnesota. We have a real chance to, it's not often, I feel like you get a chance to make a big impact with your vote in a presidential race, because I feel like both candidates that we're sort of presented with are, often problematic in their own ways, but this is a time where we can really make an impact if we come together and do basically a protest vote against the president who is funding and abetting an ongoing genocide in Palestine right now. And so I think this uncommitted campaign, if we can pull off something similar in Maryland, if enough states do it, if the president wants to get reelected, I think that we really can have an influence here. And so I'm happy that our chapter has now endorsed Uncommitted and joined a part of that campaign. From my understanding, many organizations around our state are planning to do something similar. And so I hope both individually and if you're a part of an organization, you'll also play a part in making that. We've got about 2 months. And so, but yeah, thank you all for being here. I think, don't really.
Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna get started with the panel. I'm going to first ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, so if you want to just go down the line, let me make sure I have Robert up actually. Do you have the ability to do that, Scott, to?
Sure. And actually,
Robert spotlight him?
Robert got knocked off. Now, could you make him a co-host? It's still joining.
Sorry.
I'm here. I'm here.
Excellent, Robert.
Does he need video ability?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
you just see, it says he's still joining. There we go.
All right, okay, so if you just want to go down the line here, and introduce yourselves.
Okay.
just a quick, minute or so.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me at the back?
Yes.
My name is Ajit Sai, and I work with an organization called Indian American Muslim Council. I am the advocacy director based in Washington, D.C. I am Hindu by birth, Hindu by faith. I believe in Mahatma Gandhi, and I'm fighting to restore secularism and democracy in India.
Hi, I'm Susan Karen, and I'm the chair of the Montgomery County chapter of Peace Action. And Peace Action is the largest grassroots peace organization in the United States. We deal with military spending, war, nuclear disarmament, and also oppression and violence overseas. And I got involved in the Hindutva movement because our national chapter had mistakenly endorsed a candidate. And some Muslim allies had spoken to us about it. And so I learned about it way before I got involved in the Maryland case.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Friedrich. I'm a journalist and an author. And for the past 5 years at least, I have been covering in America the issue of Hindu nationalism, i.e. Hindutva, and its intersection in particular with American politics. And I've covered a lot of politicians over that time frame: Tulsi Gabbard, Congressman Raja Krishnamurti up in Illinois, and Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller. And the one thing I want to say, I want to kind of skip some of the introduction and just say about Aruna Miller, that in my coverage of her over the past year and a half, I've been up and down the 95 corridor. I have spent at least 2 months here on the ground in Maryland. I have about 30 plus sources. I have published perhaps 24 stories on the topic and so much more. With all of that, this issue with Aruna Miller in Maryland being linked to Hindutva is by far the nuttiest, the most insane that I have seen in any of my coverage of any American politician linked to Hindutva in this entire country, where it is, as I would say, a situation where Aruna Miller and her allies are responsible for importing BJP style, BJP being the Hindu nationalist government in India, BJP style politics to America in a way where they are using every underhanded means at their that they can to silence and even destroy opposition voices and every voice of dissent. And so I'll go into that more, but this situation here in Maryland is beyond insane.
You, Robert, if you would like to introduce yourself, please. Oh, wait, we can't hear you.
Unmute.
Sorry about that. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so my name is Robert. I'm with the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. I'm also a member of No Hindutva Maryland, Racial Justice Now, and the Progressive Baptist Convention. And I just want to say thanks to our Revolution HoCo for hosting this important event. And thank you to all my fellow panelists.
Thank you. Okay, so for the first question, I'm going to pose it to you first, Ajit. If you could please define Hindutva for us, and explain the difference between Hindutva and Hinduism.
Okay, the first part is easy, the second part is not that easy. In 1923.
Can you speak up a little louder, please?
Do you have a microphone?
We do.
Is it possible to use that? Thank you, Kim. Yes, in 1923, an Indian leader named Vinayak Damodar Savarkar wrote a book called Hindutva. This is echoing. Essentials of Hindutva. It's freely available on the internet. You could read it. Fundamentally, that was when most records that's the first time the term Hindutva was recognized widely. Although there was a Bengali writer back in 1892 or thereabouts, had also done a treatise on Hindutva. Until 1923, when Savarkar published his book, Essentials of Hindutva. And in that book, he made fundamentally the following claims. He said, India is the Punya Bhumi, that is the religious homeland and fatherland of the Hindus. that Hindus have first claim on India, that Muslims and Christians are outsiders. And if they do not accept the primacy of Hindu faith, Hindu gods, and Hindu way of life, then they better be ready to be treated as second-class citizens. That was outlined in detail in that book. Subsequently, 2 years after that, in 1925, a gentleman by the name of Hindutva, who was also from the state of Maharashtra, which of course was not called Maharashtra at that time, and who was a close friend, and you could say disciple of Savarkar. He met with Savarkar and then he founded an organization in 1925 called the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. If you read his biography, he has himself said that as a kid he would go and throw stones at mosques. Savarkar, of course, and I cannot go into the details of the entire book, but he also, among other things, he justified and indeed advocated the use of rape, especially against Muslim women. Fast forward, Savarkar was involved, or at least that was the case of the Indian state, in the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. He was, of course, acquitted for lack of evidence. But Gandhi was assassinated by his disciple, and that has been established through copious. The assassin himself said, I was a disciple and I worked very closely with Savarkar, Nathuram Godse, who is now, of course, celebrated by many members of the Hindu right wing in India, including a member of parliament from the city of Bhopal, Sadhu Pragya, who some years ago said that Nathuram Godse was a nationalist. And Hindutva gained ground as an ideology that sought to convert India into a Hindu country. So when India gained independence, when India adopted the tricolor as its national flag, with white, green, and saffron as the colors, the RSS wrote against it and said, this is not the color of India. Saffron is the color of India because this is a Hindu country. When India adopted a new constitution in 1950, 26th of January, the RSS said this cannot be the constitution of India. The constitution of India must follow Manusmriti, which is an ancient text considered by many to be a religious text, which prescribes how Hindus need to live. So Hindutva is essentially an ideology that claims that India belongs to the Hindus, and non-Hindus, especially Muslims and Christians, do not have a right to stay in India. Now, of course, as we know in the modern history, Mahatma Gandhi was opposed to this reading of what India is. Gandhi was famous for his multiculturalism, pluralism. Gandhi said, Hindu or Musalman meri do aankhein, which basically he said Hindus and Muslims are my two eyes. Gandhi fought for pluralism, secularism. And it is a testament to Gandhi's vision and his leadership that when India gained independence in 1947, Gandhi was assassinated barely 5 months after that. India was more than 80% Hindu. It was overwhelmingly rural. It was overwhelmingly illiterate and poor. And yet, in 1951-52, when the first national elections in India were organized, the Congress Party, which was a secular democratic party under Jawaharlal Nehru, they got more than 40% of the national vote. Whereas the Bharatiya Janata Sangh, which was a political party of the RSS, got only 2.6% of the vote. A party founded in the name of Hindu supremacism got only 2.6% of the national vote, whereas 80% of the country was Hindu. So the Hindus overwhelmingly rejected Hindutva when India started its journey as a free country. Another Hindu party, called Hindu Mahasabha, to which Gandhi's assassin had belonged, got 0.9% of the vote. So Hindutva was an ideology that was essentially and fundamentally rejected by the Hindus of India right after independence for a long time. And that speaks volumes about the ideology of pluralism, multiculturalism that was embedded in the Indian psyche by leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. And Gandhi himself was a towering personality, of whom Albert Einstein said that generations to come will scarcely believe that a man such as this walked in flesh and blood on this planet. And Lord Mountbatten, the outgoing Governor General of India, said that history will place Gandhi next to Buddha and Jesus Christ. And he was a Hindu reformist leader. He was out and out a Hindu leader. He was proud of his Hinduism. I think if we need to understand the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva, we need to understand the difference between Savarkar and Gandhi. Gandhi defined modern India. Now, the ideology that killed Gandhi is in power.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to quickly add anything to that definition?
Yeah, so quickly, I'm gonna overlap a little bit with my colleague Ajit. Hindutva is a religious nationalist political ideology, which is comparable basically to Christian nationalism or other other forms of nationalism which intertwine with religion. It is, as Ajit mentioned, originating in the 1920s as a specifically articulated ideology, which then led to the production of an organization, a paramilitary organization called the RSS, also in the 1920s. Fast forward to the 21st century, the RSS paramilitary, which is undergirded by this ideology of Hindutva, through its political wing, the BJP, has ruled over India for the past 10 years. And fundamentally, what Hindutva wants is to turn India into a country of Hindus and only for Hindus, where anybody else, especially Christians and Muslims, but also Sikhs and Buddhists and others, is treated as an other, as foreign to the land, as somebody who's not trustworthy as a citizen of the country, who is viewed even as a traitor of the country simply because they follow a different religion. Hindutva, especially through its organized elements like the RSS, has implemented that vision violently on many, many occasions, including in 2002 in the state of Gujarat, under the auspices of Mr. Modi, who is now the Prime Minister of India. One last point is, especially for us here in America, the RSS, we can't get into all of it tonight, but the RSS is the head of a whole family of organizations underneath it, subsidiary to it, which pursue various purposes like the BJP pursues politics. Here in America, we have a direct international wing of the RSS, which is known as the HSS, and which is here in Maryland, all over the country, and which is one of the organizations whose members and leaders are fundamentally behind propping up many of these Hindutva League candidates around the country, including people like Lieutenant Governor Rev Miller.
Thank you. Robert, do you have anything to add, or can we move on to the next question? I'll go.
No, I think that they covered everything. We can move on to the next question. That's fine.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna pose the next one to Peter first. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience with Hindutva here in Maryland? I know you touched on it a little bit, but if you could expand on that.
Yes. Oh, you want details?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I can do a little bit of that.
Sure.
Well, as I mentioned, I've covered Hindutva linked candidates all around America. And when I say Hindutva linked, basically what I'm looking at with politicians is usually a combination of three things. One is the money they're taking. Are they taking money, especially large amounts and repeatedly, from leaders and members of Hindutva organizations in America? Are they attending, have they historically attended, especially repeatedly, Hindutva events here in America? And three, are there policies in some way supporting Hindutva or advancing Hindutva's interests? That whole combination is present with Governor Miller. I won't get into that. What I do want to get into is my coverage of her over the past year and a half here in Maryland. And I mentioned that this situation is nutty. And why is it so nutty? Well, there's two major things that I want to touch on. One is, in this particular instance with Aruna Miller, one is the level of viciousness that I have seen being implemented as she's being called out. Two is the weird collaborations that are occurring that are helping her to stay in power and to avoid being called out. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, but I want to touch on the viciousness, my personal experiences. In this whole coverage, I have repeatedly been covering the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, which happens to be a center of major support for Lieutenant Governor Miller. Last year, two particular events. One, I went to a committee meeting, and I went, and in due course, I availed myself of the opportunity to pose questions in the public comments at the committee meeting. As I did that, the committee chair immediately shut down the meeting, rushed out of the room. Fellow committee members started shouting at me when I tried approaching her one-on-one to ask follow-up questions outside the committee. And when I finally got a chance to question her on camera, she called the questions not appropriate and ran away from them. And subsequently, sources, little birds told me that not only was the committee considering, because I had the audacity as a journalist to ask her questions, that the committee was considering passing a resolution denouncing me individually, but also that the chair of the committee and Aruna Miller had reportedly met and were looking for ways to pursue legal action against me for daring to ask questions of the committee chair. The other was last year at the fundraising gala for this committee. I signed up to attend it. I didn't sign up as a journalist because there was no sign up for journalists. I signed up, I went. When I showed up to register, they gave me a press badge, which I had not asked for. And then they made me sign a statement affirming that I would not ask any too many questions of attendees and guests at the event. I went in and I sat down. As I sat down, a member of the committee came up to me and told me I was compelled to remain in my chair. I was not allowed, because I was press, because I was a reporter, that I was therefore not allowed to get up out of my chair and wander around the room and approach people, ask questions. I didn't sit in my chair. He came up to me again, and I felt deeply intimidated, threatened, and he basically ordered me to take my seat as a security measure, told me I was not allowed to move around again, and then told me that whatever happens afterwards, if I don't follow his instructions, is on me. Really felt at the end of it that I was being dealt with by a mafioso who just happened to be on that committee. So the collaboration, the collaboration I want to get into, basically in summary, those are my personal experiences, but as I've developed dozens of sources around the state, talked with people. I've talked with people who've been stalked and followed, who've been driven out of the state or even out of the country because they were raising concerns about Miller's Hindutva ties, people who have lost business, had their political careers destroyed, etc., 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 been threatened, been intimidated. Now the collaboration, and I would love to hear, Susan, your perspective on that. The collaboration has been the strangest thing that I have witnessed. Because here, in Maryland, especially in Montgomery County, for some reason, two of the biggest political figures who have been carrying water for Aruna Miller and covering up her Hindutva ties and going after people who dare to expose those ties are this committee, this Montgomery County Democratic Committee Chair, Salman Kadir Ahmed, and Zainab Chaudhry, who is the head of CARE Maryland. And the oddest part of this is they are both Muslim. And when we're talking about Hindutva, we're talking about an ideological movement in India, which is currently on the verge of perpetrating a genocide against Muslims, against perhaps 200 million people in India. And here in Maryland, for some reason, including with this organization CARE, which is supposed to be dedicated, CARE Maryland, the state chapter, which is supposed to be dedicated to advancing the civil rights and liberties of Muslims. And then, of course, with the Montgomery Democratic Party, we have Pakistanis as the top collaborators, carrying water for Aruna Miller and going after people who dare to expose Miller's ties to Hindutva. I believe we have a Q&A audience later, or Q&A section later.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a
There you go.
Go ahead. Sorry, we're dealing with a Zoom issue.
Oh, that's the other meeting.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm just gonna really talk about the 3 points that Peter mentioned on how you figure out if an elected official has ties to the Hindu nationalist movement. And you're not just fishing or doxing or looking for, they're Hindu. And so the first one is she aligned with the individuals? And so the two organizations is the BJP, and the Friends of BJP is based in Sugar Land, Texas. And then the other is that's the RSS, and then the BJP. So we have documentation that she actually flew down and did some fundraisers with Ramesh Butata, and he's actually the head of the BJP, or HSS, and that she was also aligned with some BJP. But we felt that wasn't enough to make a case. So then we started looking at the donations, and we didn't want to dox. We were very careful in our rubric. It was she accepting donations that were large amounts, and were they from Hindutva leaders? It wasn't, if it's a rank and file person who is a Hindu nationalist, we weren't looking at that. We were looking at leadership. So the bar was really high, and we found quite a bit. And what was interesting was we prepared all this documentation because we were really worried about lawsuits. And we were told by journalists that we had underestimated the amount of ties that she had to the Hindutva. And we also took that information and did a power map to sort of see everything. And what was teased out is there was a Hindutva local leader, his name's Dr. Sudhir Siksaria, and he is aligned with the OFBJP. And we were able to trace the relationship between him and Lieutenant Governor Miller. So he was her treasurer, he was the one who introduced her to all of these things. We would not have been able to do this without the research. So the research was really important to get the journalists to cover the story, to tease out some relationships that wouldn't have been there, and also documentation that we could use, because we ended up doing an action alert. And we didn't say, you're Hindutva and you need to denounce this. We said, return this money. This is really hardcore leadership money. And not only did she refuse to do that, but then she was complaining about another candidate who took some money. That candidate, as soon as he discovered the Hindutva money, he returned it, or he gave it to Muslim advocates. So I think we are the first state where a candidate had actually returned the money. And it was inadvertent. But her relationship is really tied in terms of seeking out these relationships with these individuals.
So, on 14th of August 2022, an organization named Indian Business Association took out a parade to mark the independence of India, the anniversary of Indian independence, in the twin towns called Edison and Woodbridge. They featured something called a backhoe. Is that what it's called in America? Something that's backhoe. Okay,
Yeah.
backhoe. Tractor sort of a thing. They put pictures of Narendra Modi, India's Prime Minister, and of Yogi Adityanath, who is the Chief Minister of the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is my home state. And there was immediately an outcry against the use of that motif. Politicians from the state of New Jersey, including the two United States senators from New Jersey, who issued a joint statement, condemned the presence of a bulldozer. Black Lives Matter released a statement saying the use of the bulldozer is the same as the use of a, what was that?
that it was comparable to like,
KKK used to use
having KKK displaying a noose.
a noose.
Yeah.
It was comparable. What the bulldozer means to the Muslims is the same as the noose, what it means for the black people. And initially, the Indian Business Association, they tried to, brazen it through. They said no. And of course, the story is that the bulldozer is now being famously or infamously deployed by administrations across India, especially the BJP-led administrations. BJP being the right-wing Hindu majoritarian party to which Mr. Modi belongs, and which is the political offshoot of the RSS. And they have been using these bulldozers to demolish homes and places of worship of Christians and Muslims without court interventions in a completely illegal and criminal manner. And they tried to brazen it through. And everybody condemned it. Members of Congress, the 2 US senators, the mayors of Edison and Woodbridge, they condemned it. A whole bunch of civil society condemned it. The NAACP condemned it. Eventually, the Indian Business Association was forced to apologize, formally apologize for bringing the bulldozer to that parade. And they also acknowledged that this is divisive, the use of the bulldozer was divisive, and that it was, I don't remember the exact language, but they acknowledged that it was wrong to use the bulldozer because it impacted the Muslim community. So how tone deaf can you be? The answer is only because if you are a committed, hardcore, dogmatic Hindu nationalist or any kind of ethno-nationalist, any kind of supremacist, it's like the Donald Trump country. It's like hardcore Islamist country. It's like hardcore white racist country, right? Donald Trump said, I'm the least racist man you will ever meet, right? It's the same people, it's the same mentality, it's the same set of emotions. The important thing to remember is, and this is where all of this BJP and everything comes in, the Grand Marshal of that parade by the Indian Business Association was a man named Sambit Patra, who is not only a member of the BJP in India, an Indian citizen, an Indian national, but he was actually a spokesperson of the BJP in India, national spokesperson. He was flown in from India to be the Grand Marshal of this parade. All right, this was this was August of 2022. On 29th of November 2022, maybe about 2.5 months later, an organization called Global Hindu Heritage Foundation in the town of Frisco, Texas, circulated a flyer raising funds, and they listed as some objectives why they were raising funds. The first objective they mentioned was Ghar Wapasi. What does it mean? Ghar means home. Ghar Wapasi means homecoming. What is this term? It's a hugely politically divisive term. It's an Islamophobic term. It's an anti-Christian term. What does it mean? I come from India. I was born and raised in India. I've lived there 90% of my life. Ghar Wapasi is a forced criminal campaign by Hindu fundamentalists, the paramilitarists in India, to forcibly convert non-Hindus, especially Christians and Muslims, to Hinduism. To catch hold of poor people, to threaten them, to bulldoze them, not literally, metaphorically, and get them to convert. So an organization sitting in Frisco, Texas, is raising funds to fund this wholly discriminatory and fundamentally racist activity, and certainly illegal and criminal in India, although unfortunately India is such a totalitarian state now that the legislature, the administration, the criminal justice system have merged into one unholy ideology. But that is being funded by Hindu organizations from the United States. The second objective that they listed in the flyer was the demolition of churches in India. Okay. So, of course, fast forward, we have several of our organizations, we have filed an official and formal complaint with the Internal Revenue Services asking that the that the approval of 501c3 be taken away from this organization.
Thank you. So next question, I want to start with Robert. If you could talk about the policy implications in Maryland of this topic, and if you may also want to expand your your answer to kind of discuss why the panel was named what it was named, because I know that there were some questions about that. If you were able to briefly touch on that.
Okay, so why the panel was named what it was named. So Hindutva, the new Jim Crow, is because it's anyone who reads history or anyone who understands the geopolitics or internal relations can tell you that what is happening in India to other marginalized communities, such as the Dalits, such as the Muslims, the Christians, are very similar into what's happened to, and in many ways continually happened to, the African American community. This ties into one of the things known as the issue of desecration. Now, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the fact that I'm part of an organization that has been fighting to stop the desecration of a historic African American burial ground in Bethesda known as Moses. Moses Cemetery, first got desecrated back in the 60s, and then it was continuing to get desecrated again. Around 2020, the planning board approved a permit for a private developer to desecrate part of the other burial ground known as Parcel 242 to make way for a storage unit. Right? This, despite the fact that the county commissioned a study, they actually commissioned several studies showing that you need to deal with the whole area, which means you have to identify the borders and work with the descendant community. One member of the planning board is a man by the name of Pratap Varma. Pratap Varma, was appointed to the planning board a few years ago, and he signed off on the permit to allow the desecration to go forward. It's one thing if he didn't know. However, we uncovered via MPIAs, which is Maryland's version of a FOIA request, that he was well aware that the developers were finding coffin lids, they were finding tombstones, they were finding glass bottles, which, for those who understand African American history and burial ground, there's a spiritual significance of glass bottles and glass beads. What we found out about a year or two after the fact, that he has connections to organizations such as the Overseas, and has raised money for Overseas Friends of the BJP, the Hindu American Foundation, and I know I'm going to butcher this one, so please bear with me, a group called the Vivekananda Kendra, an organization that back in August of 2023 was kicked out of the Parliament of World Religions because of their ties to this movement. This is just one example of how Hindutva, this idea, this Hindu nationalism, has affected a marginalized community overseas. I want to give another example. This affects also the home foreclosure crisis in Prince George's County, which, as some of you may or may not know, is now the second wealthiest black county in the country, but at the time it was number one. But what's going on is that you have a company that's called Select Portfolio Services that has been disproportionately foreclosing on black homes, right? And so what we found out, like with the studies, that the owner of Select Portfolio Services has been a member of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the American chapter, which the CIA, mind you, has classified as a violent far-right military group. And that's very important. That's, to me, is scary coming from the CIA, an agency notorious for overthrowing democratic regimes. And what he's been doing with that money that he's getting from foreclosure, he's been donating to the VHPA, which has been donating back to India to begin what's called the demolition of churches. And this isn't something I'm making up. This is something that anyone can go online. You can go to the rallies and look up the rallies and say, we want to demolish the churches. We want to demolish the mosques. This is not opinion, this is fact. So I want to reiterate this. by taking money out of the black community and using it to essentially, I'm sorry about that, something popped up. My apologies, everyone. And using it to fund what is essentially what organizations like the Human Rights Watch are calling a potential genocide or acts of genocide going on in India. This is something that we should be very, very concerned about. Now, I want to be very clear here because I know there's some people that confuse, and I know Brother Ajit did, I think, a pretty decent job. There is a difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. Hinduism is about respect for all life. It is about loving and receiving your neighbor and coming as you are. Hindutva is Hindu nationalism, which seeks to basically create an ethno-state. That is not opinion, that is fact, that was identified by Savarkar, that has been identified by Nochuram Godse, that has been, time and time again. So that's just my 2 cents on how this ideology has begun affecting Maryland politics in general, and has begun affecting marginalized communities here.
Thank you.
Can I just add one sentence with this? Just one sentence.
One sentence, I'll give you a sentence.
Yes.
Just one sentence is, we must also remember that the founders of the Hindu nationalist ideology, Savarkar, and the second leader of the RSS Golwalkar, they spoke in glowing terms about Adolf Hitler and the Nazi party and its ideology. And they supported the Holocaust, the killings of the Jews. Fast forward, now they are supporters of the state of Israel and the Zionist ideology.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna ask one last question here. If you can try to quickly summarize, some of the efforts to confront Hindutva in Maryland, and I think I'll just have one or two of you answer that. Maybe Robert and either Susan or Peter. Okay.
So right now, Lieutenant Governor is in office, and so we're trying to track how Dr. Sixaria is getting access as a result of his relationship with her. So we know that during the Preakness, there was a big event with Governor Moore that had all these elected officials. He was there and he was schmoozing with all the elected officials. We know Governor Moore is intending to run for president. All of these others have higher ambitions. So he's building those relationships, getting their phone numbers. But when Modi came to the White House, you had elected officials, billionaires, and celebrities all invited to this event. And Dr. Sixaria was there. And if you look, there's sort of this A-list. It was sort of surprising that he was there. And you look at the pictures, and he's talking to Secretary of State Tony Blinken, and he's talking to the Assistant Secretary. So clearly there are some access issues that we really need to be concerned about. We do have some success stories. We got John King to return the money, but the other success story is Aruna always had aspirations to be in Congress. You can inform foreign policy more in Congress, and she was always following David Trone's seat. And now David Trone is giving up his seat, and she chose not to run, and we think that has to do with the elevation of the Hindutva story.
Thank you. Robert, if you want to touch on that at all?
No, I think Susan had covered everything that I was going to say. So Susan, great job.
Excellent. Well, in that case, I will give you each 1 minute. I will actually time you, okay? I'm going to give you 1 minute to say like a final, what you want the takeaway to be. Start with Peter, work our way down.
Yeah, I want the takeaway to be thinking about how Hindutva's infiltration of Maryland politics has potential to impact both the religious minorities in India as well as the environment here, the climate here in Maryland. You mentioned, Ajit, about the bulldozer. In front of that bulldozer was marching a contingent of OFBJP, and behind was the HSS. And that is the sort of thing that they're importing here to America in New Jersey, is intimidation on American streets of religious minorities. Here, we're seeing an importation of BJP-style politics to Maryland, where there's intimidation, threats, harassment, etc. And so we're seeing, you mentioned the churches and the fundraising for destruction of churches from Texas to India. We're seeing a two-way street that both what's happening here in America with Hindutva and the Hindu nationalist movement is impacting us, or is impacting religious minorities over there, and then is impacting our politics here as well, and twisting and corrupting our politics.
I just want to invite South Asians, and particularly Muslims, to get engaged. I'm a white woman, and Rona just dismisses everything as we're racist. At the time, IAMC and Hindus for Human Rights, they had a lawsuit, so they couldn't be involved. And as Peter said, we had some Muslim operatives who were sort of undermining and delegitimizing. But I think with the media, we have more people now who really recognize this issue. But it's your story, and we need you to be at the forefront. And I think there's plenty of people that will support that. But we really need you all to be the champions, because it's more authentic than a white chick doing it.
Yeah. In 2011, when a white terrorist, racist named Anders Breivik, he shot and killed 69 students and bombed a building where 8 people died in Norway. He had written up a 1,500-page manifesto. 102 pages out of those 1,500 pages talked about Hindutva. And he said we need to learn from Hindutva how to treat the minorities, how to treat the Muslims. Hindutva is a vicious, vile, anti-people, anti-democratic ideology that should have no place in a modern, pluralist United States of America. It is set to destroy the fabric of India. If it is allowed to expand in the United States, it's going to create mayhem in this country.
Good job. You timed yourself too.
52 seconds.
Okay, Robert, if you want to have a minute to give takeaways.
One takeaway that I think we should all consider is the fact that right now we are in a war. It is either going to be fascism or liberation. And notice I didn't say democracy because here in the United States we've yet to really achieve democracy. So what we really need to do is that we need to really be clear here that fascism, no matter what form it takes, that we have to speak out against it, we have to nip it in the bud, we have to hold people accountable who have connections to these fascist nationalistic movements. And what we need to do is that we need to essentially work together and say, are we going to have democracy for the many, or are we going to have or are we going to allow these views to pollute our politics? That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Robert. So now we're going to transition to a quick presentation from No Hindutva Maryland. And we are going to put up a QR code. We're probably only going to have time to answer like 1 or 2 questions. We need to be up here at like 8:45 on the dot. So I'm going to put the QR code up there, and you guys can submit questions that way, and then yeah, we will get to what we can. I want to just thank all the panelists again so much for being here, for all of your time and energy in this work. I very much appreciate it, and yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. I believe Scott wanted to say something. Do you want?
Sounds like going to do his PowerPoint or no?
He was saying, with the time that it might be better to not do that.
You want to straight to Q&A?
Or did
if you want to say something really quickly.
I had a closeout statement, but do the Q&A first.
All right. We need a sec to get set up, so if you could please do that first. Wait, I don't know where.
Yes, Scott, she's saying you do it.
I'm Scott Weber. I am part of No Hindutva MD. I'm also part of Our Revolution. And so part of what I wanted to do in my closeout before this was to thank Our Revolution in Howard County for putting this on and maintaining a presence in the sphere, but in an environment of anti-hate. And that's truly what this is about, is that our revolution as an organization, and even those here on the panel, are people who are fighting hate. And so I want to implore everyone who is here to let that be something that you're willing to do when you leave here. If you see hatred, call it out. If you see bullying, call it out. If you see something that is attempting to marginalize another people, call it out. Be active. It doesn't really matter what religion you're from, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't matter whether you believe in a God or which God. Hatred has no place in Montgomery County, in Howard County, in Maryland, in our country, and we also hope the same for India. So what I wanted to do, again, is just to not only thank our revolution, Howard County, but have each one of you, please, commit to yourself to fight hatred no matter where you find it and no matter where you see it, and get involved. Your voice is important. Part of being part of this democracy is making sure your voice is heard. This is an excellent event where it shows we can get together, we can have conversations. There are people who disagree. If you're online, they have differing opinions. Let's celebrate that. Let's learn more. The more we learn, the more we exchange, but do so with a civil attitude. Do it in a notion of peace. Find a better solution for all people who live together. And it's this separation, this concept of superiority is what we're all fighting. White superiority is not acceptable. Hindutva, Hindu supremacy is not acceptable. Islamic superiority is not acceptable. Buddhist, you name whatever it is there. Let's let India be that beautiful, beautiful, pluralistic country of 1.5 billion people. And let's let this country also be that same country that it also is a pluralistic one, and show the world. All right, so it looks like we're now ready with the QR code.
Yes.
If people could, Mary, why don't you take the explanation?
Yeah, so we do have one, okay, yeah, so this one is for Peter. If you could outline the similarities between Hindutva and Christian nationalism in the U.S.
Yeah, fundamentally just, the similarities are fundamentally in terms of the way they view the world. A supremacist approach, religion should undergird and guide everything in the government, and othering of people who don't follow that majority religion. You know, there's a lot I could go into. One of the major corollaries is that Hindu nationalists have this idea that is very comparable to what's called the white replacement theory, I believe. This idea in white nationalism that white people are somehow on the brink of no longer being the majority, that's a disastrous thing that we have to all, as white people, unite against and prevent. Hindus, despite being like 78–80% of India, Hindu nationalists are putting forward the same basic concept that somehow Hindus, despite being the supermajority of India, are on the brink of extinction in their own country, and that the only thing that they could do to prevent that is to come together, rally the wagons, and go after anybody else who's not Hindu. So a lot of other similarities I could get into, but those are a few.
Thank you.
Are there any overt connections between these two hate groups? Yes, at least one example.
Yes, sure.
On 6th of January 2021, outside the US Capitol, when there was an insurrection, there was at least one Indian person. His name, it was later discovered, is Krishna Gudapati. He is associated with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America. This is all part of record. It's all on the internet. And he was part of the insurrectionists right outside the US Capitol. As recently as a couple of months ago, when there were nationwide celebrations by Hindu right-wing groups for the temple, the controversial temple that's been built in India, Krishna Gudapati's name was one of the organizers' names in one of the flyers. So that is one. Secondly, Steve Bannon has been a regular guest. I think the Republican Hindu Conference or something. So yeah, so that's there's a lot you can dig deep.
And I want to just add too, because there's a lot of actual interactions. But for instance, in the UK, the EDL, the English Defence League, the far right group, they have been actually physically collaborating with, back and forth with Hindu nationalists in that country, and developing a deep alliance. Here in America, there's quite a bit of an alliance growing between some of the leading Islamophobic industry organizations. I think Middle East Forum, for instance, is one of the major ones.
Daniel Pipes.
Yeah, and on and on.
Spencer.
Yep.
They all work with them.
Doing collaborative events.
Yeah, all the time.
Thank you. Another question was about whether you have engaged in meaningful conversation with people who, sorry, Robert's not plugged in, with people who support Hindutva. And
I think Peter should answer that question. There was a video of Peter that went famous in Chicago.
Oh.
The congressman and his supporters.
Kind of, yes. I've sat down and invited to coffee with one of the leading like godfathers of the Hindutva organizations here in America. He invited me. I spent probably an hour and a half sitting talking with him. It went really nowhere because basically his perspective was he wanted to try and convince me of the rightness of Hindutva. But it was a civil conversation mostly. One example that Ajit mentioned, I have actually, as a journalist, approached some politicians in the past. In particular, Raja Krishnamurti. I approached him at a campaign event in 2022 and attempted to ask him questions about his position on Hindutva, his position on this RSS organization, paramilitary organization. And the response was, as I was calmly attempting to, that his supporters at the event physically ran, blocked me, tried to trip me, and then started shouting and screaming at me all on camera. And the congressman himself turned this way, turned that way, and was rushed out of the room by supporters of his who are actual members of the overseas Friends of the BJP, the American wing of the BJP. So in attempting to civilly even interact with some of these politicians and just inquire, same thing with Aruna Miller. I've attempted to attend 2 or 3 events where she's there, and every time I've been there, she is rushed out of the room immediately after the event ends. Please stand, block my way, as I'm just standing there with the camera attempting to talk with her, which I understand, according to people who know the situation and Aruna Miller's style, is not something she would normally do. She would normally stick around to chat up the room. So it's very difficult to have those kinds of conversations, even though one might attempt them.
last response,
It's,
we have to start cleaning up
yes,
after this.
it's also, we must also understand that to seek a dialogue with, especially Hindutva in India, is the same as seeking dialogue with white racists, with the Islamists who are out to kill people. In 2021, a global consortium of reporters found through a series of investigations that the Israeli company NSO's software called Pegasus was used by multiple governments across the world to target and illegally and criminally hack the personal electronic devices of many people. And of the 150 people whose name came out in India, including the Indian opposition leader Rahul Gandhi, then sitting judge of the Supreme Court of India, I was one of those 150 people. So even trying to seek a dialogue with Hindutva people is to jeopardize the safety and security of oneself and one's family. They have put away tens of thousands of people in prison in India. Just yesterday, G.N. Sai Baba, Delhi University professor, 2 days ago, he came out of prison after being acquitted by the High Court. And he spent about 10 years in prison. So this is a vicious ideology. Its followers will stop at nothing. But in India, they're actually killing people every day. A Muslim is being lynched to death by vigilante. And this is reported. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. In fact, the US Holocaust Memorial Museum in its report last month in February has written about it. The US Holocaust Memorial Museum. There is absolutely every bit. The United Nations High Commission for Human Rights 1 week ago, last week, Monday, talked about it in his report to the UN Human Rights Council.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, we have been asked to get out of here at 8:45, so we have a lot of things to clean up. I believe Hindutva Maryland has, we entered a couple from the.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's what it's from. Do you have handouts for people for information?
We do?
Yes, so you can pick up the form.
Brochures are outside, and if you want to get involved,